This hearing on the task force on defending constitutional rights and exposing institutional abuses will come to order. Welcome, everybody. Without objection, the chair may declare recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purposes of making an opening statement. Good morning and welcome to the first hearing for the task force on, again, defending constitutional rights and exposing institutional abuses. America's Medicaid system was designed to provide health care for low-income Americans. Unfortunately, as reporting from Luke Rosiak at the Daily Wire has recently revealed, fraudsters and cheats are stealing billions in hard-earned American tax dollars. This is something we've seen before, unfortunately. Just a couple months ago, the House Oversight Committee examined a similar problem in Minnesota where Somali fraudsters stole over $16 billion from American taxpayers. Today, we're going to be focusing on Ohio, which appears in many ways quite similar. Ohio broadened its Medicaid program through home and community-based services, or HCBS waivers, authorized under the Social Security Act. HCBS waivers allow states to provide home-based health care as opposed to providing health care in hospitals or other institutions. But these waivers also allow states to cover non-medical personal care services such as cooking and cleaning, as well as companionship and conversation. The problem is that fraudsters are billing Medicaid for personal care services that were never actually provided in many cases. Here's how it works. A fraudster finds an elderly person in Ohio, oftentimes a family member, who he believes will qualify for federally funded home health services. The fraudster then gets a note from a doctor which vouches for the elderly person's supposed needs. Because the fraudster is unequipped to deal directly with the Medicaid bureaucracy, he contracts with a home health business who acts as an intermediary between himself and the federal government. The business then facilitates Medicaid payments from the taxpayer to the fraudster while taking a cut off of the top. In the personal care Medicaid waiver program in Ohio alone, taxpayers have lost an estimated $1.2 billion due to fraud. $1.2 billion of hard-earned American tax dollars are now in the hands of criminals. So who are these fraudsters? Well, just like in Minnesota, many of them are Somali. There are an estimated 60,000 Somalis living in Ohio right now. That means that Ohio is the second largest Somali population in America, second only to Minnesota. In addition to Somali fraudsters, Ohio is home to the largest population of Bhutanese immigrants in America. Recent reporting shows that many of the Somali and Bhutanese communities commit a large portion, if not the majority, of home health Medicaid fraud in Ohio. That may not be the politically correct thing to say, but we believe that is the truth. So what do we know about these businesses that are facilitating Medicaid fraud? Thanks to Rosiak's investigative reporting, we know quite a bit. They oftentimes have names like Capital Home Health, Continental Home Health, Dynamic Home Health Care, or Ohio Senior Home Health Care, or some derivation of a similar name. Many of them operate out of largely abandoned, often windowless buildings like the one at 6161 Bush Boulevard, which is home to 94 different companies that have recently billed Medicaid $66 million. There have also been multiple reports of other abandoned buildings, companies sharing the same address, and corporate names that are identical. Indeed, many of these companies appear virtually indistinguishable from one another. They don't advertise themselves, they charge the same rates, and offer no clear explanation of how they even acquired large numbers of patients, often seemingly overnight. So I think what the American people would like to better understand, and one of the purposes of this hearing, is why was this allowed to happen? Of course, part of the answer is in fact immigration. The reality is that America wouldn't have a problem with Somali and Bhutanese fraud if we didn't import large numbers of Somali and Bhutanese people. That's a fact. This appears to be the tip of the iceberg of a gross abuse of America's immigration system. For too long, our government allowed foreigners from low-trust societies with very little vetting to pour into our communities. Now, as elected officials, we can't stand idly by as these fraudsters exploit our welfare system and get rich off of American taxpayers, and we can't back down to fraud simply because of spurious accusations of racism. Secondly, as we'll discuss, we have a problem with verifying the integrity of America's welfare programs. Programs like the electronic visit verification system, including its GPS tracking system, were not properly utilized. That means that in many cases, we can't even verify if any of the billed home health services were even provided. In many cases, family members are billing Medicaid for alleged services provided to their own relatives. At the same time, we've seen billboards in Columbus advertise that people can get paid for caring for a loved one at home. The result is that fraudsters and fraudulent home health businesses are stealing massive sums of money by abusing and defrauding federal Medicaid. This isn't just about safeguarding our constituents' hard-earned tax dollars, but it's also about saving our society from fraudsters and cheats and protecting the availability of critical programs for the American people. According to Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Oz, half of all fraud in federal government programs is in health care. He recently revealed that eliminating fraud in Medicare alone would double the life expectancy of the Medicare Trust Fund without any other legislative fixes. The purpose of this hearing is to better understand the nature, scale, and scope of Medicaid fraud in Ohio, to understand why it happened, and to better understand who is responsible. I want to thank our witnesses for appearing today on this important topic. And with that, I'd like to yield to Ranking Member Simon for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for our witnesses and members of the public for attending today. This is the first hearing convened by the Task Force on Defending Constitutional Rights and Exposing Institutional Abuses, and I have to say, if this hearing is any indication of what this task force intends to do, I think the American people have reason to be a bit concerned because they are being gaslit. Families across the country are struggling to afford rent, they are struggling to afford groceries, they are struggling to afford health care, and they are struggling to afford child care. And many, particularly our elders, are wondering how they're going to retire one day. Seniors are worried about the future of Medicare and Social Security. Our disabled populations are fighting every day to access the care for the services that they need to live. And yet we're here. We're here having this conversation. Republicans have called this hearing on universal basic fraud. But before we've heard a single witness, and again, thank you all for being here, before we have received a single finding, the conclusion has already been written. The premise is that the public benefit programs are inherently suspect, and that the people who rely on them should be viewed with both skepticism and distrust rather than compassion, and I wholeheartedly and forcefully reject this premise. Now, let me be clear, and I want this to be heard, again, loud and clear. Fraud should and must be investigated. Inefficient systems must be addressed. Bad actors should be held accountable wherever they exist, but one bad actor, even a few bad actors, don't and should never define an entire program. Millions, and we mean millions, of Americans rely on Medicaid. Seniors rely on it, disabled folks rely on it, working families rely on it, caregivers rely on it, and as somebody, me, who's cared for a terminally ill person, the person that I love most in the world, my husband, we received and got a ton of community support, including home health. I know that these services are not just lifelines, but they're often the difference between stability and literal crisis. Well, what concerns me most is that too often conversations like this one are not actually about accountability. They become the justification for gutting the social safety net that Americans have paid into. They become a justification for making it harder for people to access care, the people that we care most about. They become the justification for undermining programs that millions of people depend on each and every day, and they become the justification for subjugating entire classes of people. Yes, subjugating entire classes of people. So if Republicans are truly concerned about fraud and waste, then we, as a body, should be willing to apply that standard consistently. We and my Republican colleagues should be willing to explain why they have pursued the largest cuts to Medicaid in American history while supporting and funding an illegal and immoral war in a ballroom at the White House. The question before us is not whether fraud should be addressed. It should be the question of why my colleagues are spending our time tearing down a program that helps real people, the sick, the disabled, the elderly, instead of addressing the high cost and conditions that families in this country are dealing with on a daily basis. I hope today's hearing focuses on solutions. And Mr. Chairman, I hope we can distinguish between isolated instances of wrongdoing, real wrongdoing, and the millions of people who rely on these services in good faith. And I hope that we remember that protecting the integrity of Medicaid ultimately lifts up and benefits all Americans. All Americans. Thank you. And I yield back. And actually, I would love to enter unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that Representatives Brown, Landsman, and Sykes of Ohio be allowed to participate in today's hearing.
I will, in fact, object to that. We've discussed through the staff earlier that we're not having waive-ons for this hearing.
Well, and I understand that, but what's really important, I would like to ask the question of why. I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. This hearing is about Ohio. Ohio Democrats asked to waive on, and we were told by committee Republicans that they could. And just yesterday, we were told at the last minute that you're no longer allowing Ohio members to participate in a hearing about Ohioans. I would love to ask why. So, Mr. Chairman, what is the reason for your refusal to allow Ohioans who are representing their people to participate in today's hearing?
I mean, waive-ons are at the discretion of the chair, and we've decided that it's going to be best if we keep this hearing limited to just the members of the chair, but appreciate the inquiry.
But Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Chairman, I'm confused because we have members who are elected by the people of Ohio who sit on the Oversight Committee and other members of Congress.
And they could have been added to this committee. So
well, you actually said yes.
Could have been added to the
Mr. Chairman,
committee.
Yesterday you asked.
Nope,
you said that they could.
So we're going to move on, and I'd like to briefly
That's extremely
recognize.
unfortunate.
Chairman, if I may, parliamentary inquiry, please.
Sure.
As the one
The gentlelady is not recognized.
as the one
Mr. Jordan.
member
The gentlelady
of
is
the
not
Democratic
recognized.
member of Ohio on this committee.
The gentlelady is not recognized.
I'm on the committee. Why are you not allowing me to speak as a member of the committee? The committee of the
You're not
whole?
on this task force. You're not recognized. Move on. Now recognize Mr. Jordan very briefly.
I think the chairman, I just wanted to welcome, I've been in Congress a few years, and I don't know if we've ever had a hearing where we had three folks from our great state testifying, folks that I don't know the Honorable Ms. Antonio, but do know Mr. Davila, and of course I've known Mr. Faber for a long time. They've served our state well, and we appreciate that. In fact, I think auditor is actually stuck with me as his member of Congress, so God bless you for putting up with me, but we want to welcome the folks from Ohio. Appreciate you being here today, and of course we welcome Mr. Rosiak as well, and with that I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now I'd like to welcome our witnesses. Thank y'all for taking the time to be here. First, we have Luke Rosiak. Luke is an investigative reporter for the Daily Wire. Mr. Rosiak broke the story on Medicaid HCBS, the waiver program in Ohio, so thank you for being here. Next, we have Keith Faber. He's the Ohio State Auditor. Mr. Faber took office in 2019. Under his leadership, his office has conducted audits identifying improper and fraudulent Medicaid billing. Next, we have Michael Davila, a member of the Ohio House of Representatives from the 17th District. Mr. Davila served for years previously in the legislature, but most recently took office in 2025 and serves as the vice chairman of the Ohio House Finance Committee. He's an outspoken critic of Medicaid fraud and an advocate for oversight and reforms. Finally, we have Nikki Antonio, State Senator for Ohio's 23rd Senate District. Senator Antonio has been in office since 2019 and serves as Ohio's Senate Minority Leader. Thank you all for joining us, and I very much look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You can take a seat. We appreciate you being here today, and I look forward to all of your testimonies. Let me remind the witnesses that we will have read your written statement in full, and it will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes will have expired, and we will ask you to please wrap up. With that said, we'll begin with your testimonies, and I'd like to recognize Luke Rosiak for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Gill, Ranking Member Simon, Task Force members. It's an honor to be with you to discuss the Daily Wire's investigation into Medicaid home health waiver fraud. The federal government built a program so easy to game that a convicted fraudster can get approved to send unsupervised and untrained workers into elderly Americans' homes, and a refugee family can collect $90,000 a year simply by having one family member claim to be the other's caregiver, with no verification and little oversight. Medicaid calls this personal services home health care, and my investigation found millionaire tax cheats, almost all of them foreign-born, ripping off taxpayers at a scale that threatens to bankrupt America. We all have families, all of us have parents that'll get old, and yet in some states, Medicaid will pay you simply for being a normal person, as a home health aide whose job it is to provide cooking, cleaning, or just companionship and conversation to your own family member. The federal government has agreed to give waivers to certain states, letting them run these programs, even though 70% of that cost is paid by the feds. This was something that was sold to us as saving money because it would be used as an alternative to nursing homes, but it didn't work out that way. A lot more people started claiming to be sick when there was a financial benefit to their family for being sick. And so this program has more than doubled in cost in just the last few years. The number of people doing this in some communities has become so large that you can see it in aggregate job statistics. The state of California recently reported gaining jobs. Well, it actually lost jobs unless you count the people that are getting paid by the government to take care of their own family members. In New York State, it is the most common job now of any profession to be a home health aide. That's the scale we're talking about here. Now, in February, HHS released data listing corporations that are paid by Medicaid. By far, the largest billing code is personal services at $140 billion over the last several years. Personal services is the medical jargon for stuff that isn't medical at all. It's these housekeepers and people providing conversation and companionship. I did some data analysis to identify suspicious patterns. The data immediately pointed me to Columbus, Ohio. It turns out you can drive down the street in parts of Northeast Columbus, and every single building is basically a home health care provider. One building had 94 businesses inside that billed a combined $66 million to taxpayers. I began looking up these companies in public records, and what I found was really shocking. Many of the owners, maybe most of them, had other full-time jobs. This was a side hustle for them to get a couple $1,000,000, sometimes a year, sometimes a month, from Medicaid. A lot of times they had tax liens against them. They were getting all this money from taxpayers, and yet they weren't paying their own taxes. They oftentimes, or sometimes, had criminal records. True Home Healthcare is run by a man with 3 fraud convictions and by his wife, who has 3 theft convictions. A nice couple there. When I asked him basic questions about what his business did, you know what he did? He threatened my family. These are the kind of people that our government pays to go into the homes of little old ladies where anything could happen. They're inside private residences. And the same reason is it makes it so hard to prevent fraud in this program, because it's very hard to show that somebody actually went to the private residence that they said they were. Other times it seems when the business is not in the name of a criminal, it's oftentimes seems like it was put in a straw owner's name. There was an example where Omega Home Health Services was incorporated by the wife of a felon who had previously been convicted of ripping off the federal government by giving out these fake, non-existent services to old people. So he gets caught, and then his wife creates a company doing the same thing, and the federal government says, yeah, that's fine, have $6 million. There's a company that was founded on paper by a teenager, and the teenager turned out to be the son of a convicted money launderer. And so, you can think maybe the teenager wasn't actually the one running this company. Only after my database queries highlighted the abnormalities in Columbus did I learn that there was another similarity to Minnesota. Columbus contained the second largest concentration of Somalis in the US, as well as the largest concentration of Bhutanese people outside of Bhutan. Now, I visited hundreds of home healthcare companies and only saw, I think, 2 people that didn't have an accent. Whistleblowers in the area tell me companies knock on doors in ethnic neighborhoods where most people are on Medicaid and most people live in multi-generational households. And they tell the older family member to go to particular doctors and claim particular symptoms. And then they will put the younger family member on their payroll with the parent as their only patient. Now, that triggers payments of up to $90,000 a year, which the company splits with the younger relative, and the younger relative splits with the older relative. 81% of Bhutanese are on welfare, a fact that some of the remainder use to become obscenely rich. And I had a story just yesterday. A 29-year-old named Rashan Adkihari works at his dad's home healthcare company. His social media documents a life fit for a rapper or a movie star. He's drinking champagne on private jets. He's on his yacht. He's making movies starring himself. This was funded. His dad has this company that was paid $17 million for taking care of old people. Well, he's got apparently another full-time job. He's doing this on the side. The dad hasn't paid taxes in like 5 years. He's got tax liens in Ohio at the state level and at Cuyahoga County. And the 25-year-old brother has his own home health care company that got $10 million. So these are people that came here as refugees, and now they're living as millionaires, and they're getting the money because the other refugees are all on Medicaid and then are claiming to be very sick. Any private nurse, you don't even have to be a doctor, can sign off on somebody being so sick, and that's, I think, at the root of the problem here, is we have people claiming to be eligible for this program who really shouldn't be. Companies are committing fraud by paying kickbacks for no-show jobs. The patients are committing fraud, but we're just beginning to look into the root of the monster, the network of doctors who rubber stamp this fraud. That's a criminal enterprise that I think
Regular
Congress
order.
can wrap
I
it
mean,
up.
I know I'm not
Put an
waved
end
onto
to.
the committee, but this is ridiculous.
Ma'am,
As a
you are
person
not
from
recognized.
Ohio,
You're not on this
as a person
committee at
from
all.
Ohio,
This
and
is
who
not your
cannot
committee.
speak, and you're just
You are
gonna
not
let them-
recognized.
Please.
I would ask
You are not
myself to be
recognized.
recognized, that we
This
have
is
regular
absolutely
order
absurd.
for, I would ask to
Mr.
be
Rosiak is
recognized.
finishing up his time. You got
Correct.
5 seconds to
I'm
finish.
finished.
Just my 5 seconds, I
Five.
would love to take.
And we'll give your side.
Is I
that
just
as
would
well.
love, because you've gone over a minute, for the rest of the witnesses to have the same ability to speak.
You are not recognized. You're not recognized. We're gonna move
I
on.
hope you're going to be fair in this hearing.
We will be fair. I now recognize Auditor of the State, Keith Faber, for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Gill, Ranking Member Simon, and members of the task force. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today regarding fraud, risk, and oversight concerns with Medicaid. As Ohio's Auditor of State, my office is responsible for ensuring taxpayer dollars are spent legally, transparently, and efficiently. American taxpayers do not care whether dollars originate from the federal government or the state. They simply know that it's their money, and they don't want it stolen, wasted, or abused. Since taking office, my administration has worked aggressively to identify fraud, waste, and abuse, and control failures. To date, we've identified more than $9 billion in unsupported or fraudulent public expenditures, with Medicaid and unemployment programs representing the 2 largest areas of concern. As auditor, my office has secured convictions in more than 164 public officials, while also expanding fraud reporting initiatives, fraud awareness campaigns, and cybersecurity training efforts. Most recently, my office is engaged with our federal partners on public benefits fraud, including participation in the Vice President's task force here in Washington. Earlier this year, when significant Medicaid concerns surfaced in Ohio, we quickly shared our findings with the federal partners to help inform broader oversight and enforcement efforts. But our work has not stopped at the federal level. Over the last several months, I have testified multiple times before the Ohio General Assembly, repeatedly raising these concerns, outlining the weaknesses our audits and reviews have identified, and urging lawmakers to strengthen oversight, accountability, and fraud prevention across the Medicaid program. There is one point I want to make clear. Our role as auditors is not to administer the Medicaid programs or adjudicate eligibility decisions. We audit government and look for control weaknesses. It is the benefit agency's responsibility to detect and identify individual beneficiary waste, fraud, and abuse. Our role is to identify weaknesses in controls, detect anomalies, investigate credible tips, and report findings so corrective action can occur. In this year's single state audit, which is a rigorous comprehensive financial compliance audit, we identified potentially up to $4.4 billion in fraud-related exposure connected to ineligible recipients in Ohio's Medicaid programs. Our testing found an ineligible rate of 15.6%. This year's findings remain, again, highlighted the need for sustainably and substantially stronger oversight and internal controls. Today, I want to focus on two areas where our office identified significant concerns: the electronic visit verification, or the GPS system that ensures providers are where they say they are, and individuals who are enrolled in Medicaid in multiple states at the same time. Congress required EVV systems to help ensure accountability in Medicaid-funded home care services. The purpose is straightforward. Verify that services occurred, the right caregiver provided those services, and that the services occurred at the authorized time and location. Our audit found that approximately 56% of home care services were not processed through the EVV system, representing an estimated $1.1 billion of a nearly $2 billion in paid claims that were not matched with EVV visits. This is a significant control weakness. Our audit work identified problems involving incomplete or inaccurate visit data, inconsistent provider compliance, and insufficient oversight mechanisms. One important lesson from this work is that collecting large amounts of data does not automatically create accountability. Technology alone does not prevent fraud. Oversight agencies must have the staffing, analytical tools, and authority necessary to identify suspicious patterns and to act quickly when concerns emerge. Most importantly, they need to be motivated to enforce those controls. Our office has recommended stronger transparency measures, enhanced provider monitoring, and better use of predictive analytics to identify abnormal billing activity before improper payments occur in the Department of Medicaid. In fact, in March of 2024, our office released a report on concurrent enrollment, finding that more than 124,000 individuals were enrolled in Ohio Medicaid and at least one other state for 3 consecutive months. Ohio paid managed care organizations more than $1 billion associated with these enrollees. These findings highlight broader systemic challenges facing Medicaid oversight nationally, including fragmented data systems, outdated technology, delayed reporting, limited real-time monitoring capabilities, and insufficient interstate data. Too often, Medicaid oversight still operates under a pay-and-chase model, where taxpayer dollars go out first and recovery efforts happen later, sometimes years later. Prevention is substantially more effective than post-payment recovery. Our office recently provided recommendations to both the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services focused on strengthening Medicaid program integrity. These recommendations including expanding predictive analytics, improving interstate data sharing, strengthening provider screening processes, enhancing transparency tools, and improving prepayment review systems. Medicaid was created to protect society's most vulnerable. Unfortunately, bad actors are abusing the system to enrich themselves. Across the country, those administering these programs have failed to protect taxpayers. Core safeguards have been compromised, removed, or simply ignored. As a result, everyday Americans are finding it harder to afford their own lives. They are subsidizing the abuse of the system. This is an affront to fiscal responsibility and rule of law. We must stop this waste, fraud, and abuse to ensure that there are resources to serve those who truly need these services, and equally important, to avoid passing on even more debt to our children and grandchildren. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Faber. And I now recognize Ohio Representative Michael Davila for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gill, Ranking Member Simon, and members of the task force, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Mike Davila. I represent the 17th District in the Ohio House of Representatives. I previously served in the House from 2011 to 16, chairing the Oversight Committee and serving as Majority Whip. I've also served twice as a presidential appointee at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management and professional staff member on the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee. More than 25 years, I've worked to increase accountability and transparency in government as a steward of taxpayer dollars. When I first served in the legislature, I opposed Medicaid expansion. I believed then, as I do now, that expanding the program without adequate safeguards places taxpayers at risk and undermines the very people it was designed to serve. Medicaid must be preserved for those who genuinely need it: low-income families, expectant mothers, seniors, individuals with disabilities who depend on a functioning safety net. But a safety net cannot work if it becomes a target for fraud, waste, and abuse. My current work on this issue began the way many legislative investigations do, with a constituent. A concerned citizen from Strongsville brought to my attention serious questions about eligibility verification within our state's Medicaid program, particularly in the aged, blind, disabled eligibility group. That concern led my office to begin asking basic questions. In April 2025, I contacted third-party vendors involved in Medicaid eligibility verification. My request was straightforward: provide information on how Ohio verifies eligibility, how data are used to detect ineligible recipients, and what happens when potential problems are identified. The responses raised more questions than they answered. One vendor reported its asset verification tool had reviewed a portion of Ohio's Medicaid ABD population and identified a significant number of individuals whose assets appeared to exceed the eligibility limits. To be clear, a data flag is not a final eligibility determination. Some assets may be exempt, and every individual deserves a proper review. But the obvious next question was, what did ODM, the Ohio Department of Medicaid, do with those flags? That is where oversight deficiencies became clear. When my office pressed ODM, the answers were unsatisfactory. The department pointed to county-level determinations and the role of the Social Security Administration. Those factors are real, but they do not relieve the state of its obligation to know whether taxpayer dollars are being spent properly. At a minimum, the state should be able to track what happens when its own eligibility systems or vendors identify potential ineligibility. If a department cannot tell legislators what happened to flag cases, cannot clearly identify why hundreds of thousands of people left the rolls, and cannot demonstrate a reliable statewide process for reconciling eligibility concerns, then we do not have program integrity. We have fragmentation. That is why in June 2025, I introduced House Bill 356. The bill required a data sharing agreement between ODM and the Auditor of State and directed a full ABD audit. As a member of the Biennial Operating Budgets Conference Committee, I was successful in inserting and retaining those provisions of my bill in the final report. While Governor DeWine used his line item veto on 67 budget items, to my surprise, he did not veto this provision, allowing the audit to become law. It is important to be candid about the nature of this work. An audit of Medicaid is not a quick exercise. It involves a large number of people, multiple data systems, sensitive personal information, eligibility categories, asset rules, county-level determinations, federal requirements, and historical records. It takes time to conduct the work properly. But the audit is essential. It is not enough to exchange letters, make public statements, and move on. We need data, verification, and corrective action. And when public funds have been improperly paid, we need recovery and consequences. Speaker Huffman recently appointed me to the Medicaid Committee of the House, where I'm working with colleagues on a comprehensive Medicaid integrity bill, including provisions to strengthen provider enrollment, improve electronic visit verification, impose additional safeguards on high-risk providers, enhance fraud reporting, and increase penalties for fraud. Our purpose is simple: verify eligibility and services, identify bad actors earlier, and ensure real consequences when people defraud taxpayers. We expect that bill to move for swift passage by next week. This should not be a partisan issue. Medicaid fraud harms taxpayers, certainly, but it also harms legitimate providers who follow the rules. It harms caseworkers and public servants whose work is undermined by weak systems. Most importantly, it harms the truly vulnerable Ohioans who depend on Medicaid and whose care is threatened when finite resources are diverted to those who do not qualify or to providers who exploit loopholes. We can have a serious debate about the size and scope of Medicaid. We can have a serious debate about the proper relationship of federal and state governments, but there should be no debate about whether government has an obligation to prevent fraud, recover misspent dollars, and protect those whom the program is intended to serve. My message today, Mr. Chairman, is simple. Medicaid is for the people who need it, not for those who have learned how to manipulate it. Oversight is not cruelty. Verification is not extremism. Accountability is not partisanship. It is the minimum taxpayers expect and the minimum our most vulnerable citizens deserve. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to answering questions and working alongside you to improve accountability and transparency in the administration of the Medicaid program for Ohio and the nation.
Thank you, Mr. Davila. And now I recognize Ohio Senator Nikki Antonio for her opening remarks. If you can turn your microphone on. Thank you.
Okay, can we start again? Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gill, Ranking Member Simon, and members of this task force for the opportunity to testify today. During my 16 years in the Ohio legislature, I have served as ranking member on the House and Senate Health Committees. I have witnessed the impact of Ohio's Medicaid program to the state's most vulnerable. It is a privilege to be a steward of hard-earned taxpayer dollars that fund our programs. Doing everything we can to prevent fraud is certainly an important part of the stewardship. In 2014, I was one of the 10 legislators appointed to the inaugural Joint Medicaid Oversight Committee, JMOC. JMOC's purpose was to provide oversight to improve the rate of spending and quality of Medicaid. JMOC proved to be true and effective to its mission when it exposed problems with pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, who were strong-arming pharmacists and using anti-competitive business practices. As a result of JMOC's oversight, Ohio created the single PBM system currently in operation, saving Ohio Medicaid over $140 million. In 2025, this oversight committee was abolished by the Republican majority. Why? Some question the timing. JMOC was conducting an investigation into contracts with Gainwell, the nation's largest Medicaid claims processor. Coincidence? I don't know. What I do know is that Democrats in the legislature were opposed to dismantling JMOC. While Ohioans struggle to afford to put food on the table, fill their gas tank, or pay their skyrocketing utility bills, the Republican majority has continuously showed how out of touch they are. They've prioritized handouts to the wealthy and the well-connected on the backs of hardworking, everyday Ohioans. At the top of the list is the largest public corruption case in Ohio history, House Bill 6, a $61 million dark money bribery and racketeering scandal that put former Republican Speaker of the House in federal prison for 20 years. The administration has refused to pay nursing homes almost $1 billion in back pay, despite being ordered to do so by the Ohio Supreme Court. Given $1.6 billion in tax breaks, $1.4 billion more than the administration calculated, to the wealthy tech corporations to build data centers that place heavy resource burdens on local communities. Exhibit A, Republicans' one-party veto-proof rule has controlled the state for the last 15 consecutive years. They hold the House, the Senate, the governor's office, and 4 statewide offices. If there is fraud in Medicaid, it has happened on the Republican majority's watch. Perhaps it's time to clean Ohio's house. Recently, Senator Ernst opined, government employees are caught with their hands in the cookie jar, abusing their positions for personal gain. Well, Ohio Republicans appear to be emulating the playbook of the White House. The President of the United States is fleecing taxpayers across the country to fight endless wars, attempting to bankroll numerous vanity projects, and tried to stick his hand in a cookie jar, a $1.8 billion cookie jar made especially for January 6 insurgents. With an unpopular Republican gubernatorial candidate in Ohio and even more out-of-touch policies, I am not surprised that we suddenly have a call for fraud reform in Ohio, Medicaid. If there is fraud, we should root it out and remedy the situation. I'm surprised that somehow the Republicans think they're not responsible, as the supervision of the Department of Medicaid has happened on their watch. I applaud the goal of this task force, which was described, and I quote, going after institutions that stop fearing accountability and abuse the American people. We should absolutely be doing everything we can to expose and prevent fraud, use new technologies to provide oversight and accountability. These are not and should not be partisan, but should be a welcome part of any system that serves the people. Members of my caucus and I are ready to work with everyone to tackle issues of fraud, especially the abuse of taxpayer dollars, which is in essence abuse of the American people. We must maintain fiscal responsibility while ensuring that Medicaid is available to those eligible, people who are age, blind, disabled, children, and families in need. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I will do my best to answer your questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record. Is that okay?
Without objection.
Thank you. I would like to enter into the record an article February 4th, 2026 from NBC entitled, Immigrants Contributed Trillions Dollars More in Taxes Than They Received in Benefits.
Yep. Without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter some items into the record.
Go for it.
The first one is an article titled, Daily Wire Investigation Reveals One of the Biggest Government Waste Scandals Hiding in Plain Sight.
Without objection.
The second is Inside Ohio's Home Health Empire, 7 buildings, 288 Medicaid companies, $250 million.
Without objection.
The third is Meet the Convicted Fraudster Running a $1 million Medicaid Business.
Without objection.
The fourth is he was convicted for defrauding the government. Now Medicaid pays his wife millions.
Without objection.
The fifth is refugees from Bhutan build Medicaid millions. Now they drink champagne in private jets.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I ask to enter into unanimous consent.
Okay.
I would ask to enter into a record from May 20th, 2026, an article from Cleveland.com entitled, Ohio Republicans are rage baiting over Medicaid fraud, but they've run the program since 2011.
Without objection. All right. Well, thank you again to the witnesses for taking the time to be here. We certainly appreciate your time and your testimonies. And now we're moving on to the question portion of the hearing. Without further ado, I'd like to recognize Chairman Comer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for leading this, what I think is going to be a very effective task force for the frustrated American taxpayers. Mr. Rosia, your reporting highlights what seems to be the same problems that we saw in Minnesota and California. Fraudsters claiming Medicaid reimbursement for services that they never provided. Allegations of racism against anyone looking into the fraud, and state enforcement officials not doing their part in flagging rapid, unexplained growth. During your investigation in Ohio, what raised your suspicions that these providers were committing fraud?
Well, the first thing is that it wasn't their full-time job. Most Americans, I think if you're making $1 million a month, you at least have to show up. It's not part-time. But they're oftentimes working in trucking, they're working in nonprofit activism and things like that. And there was also just nobody in these buildings. You would walk down the hall and there's literally just dozens of buildings. There's stray cats living like in the parking lot because nobody ever comes here. There's like smoke alarms, batteries chirping because nobody's there. It was a very creepy thing and it didn't seem normal at all.
The same thing we saw in Minnesota. How many providers did you see located at the same address? And why is that a red flag for fraud?
Well, in one building, we saw 94 companies. There's one landlord that
How many?
owns 94.
In one address? Mm-hmm. Wow. You would think a state employee would catch that. I mean, that's part of the problem, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, with Medicaid is it's overwhelmingly federal dollars, but it's administered by the states. So the states aren't as concerned because it's federal money. It's not their money, and it's just
a joke, and I'm glad we're doing something about it. I'm glad the Vice President's interested in it, this committee's interested in it. Mr. Rosiak, did you see any other signs that services were not being provided, like abandoned office space?
Yes, I saw office space that was totally abandoned. I saw offices that had signs that said, "We've just stepped out to lunch," but it was clear that was an attempt to deceive because there was, for example, stacks of mail piled up at the door, sometimes postmarked months ago.
You also reported companies with rapid and unusual growth. Should state oversight authorities have been alarmed by these trends?
Yes, I mean, for example, there was a janitor who renamed her LLC to be Mental Health and started billing Medicaid $100,000 in the first month, later up to $650,000 in 1 month, and then she left the country. And so if you were to start a roofing business, it takes time to build clients. How do you get $100,000 in business the first month? That's something people could ask.
Well, I really appreciate your investigative work. You are curious. And that's what a journalist is supposed to be. But unfortunately, a lot of the journalists today aren't curious when it comes to fraud and abuse of taxpayer dollars. So thank you for your great work. Auditor Faber, you've been investigating Medicaid fraud in Ohio for years. It sounds like the recent reporting is not the first time that you've tried to bring these issues to the public's attention. What's going on in Ohio with these waiver programs, and why are they so susceptible to fraud?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, the short answer is that whenever we have a big government program, we essentially historically have predicated these on this trust concept. You sign up, you say you're eligible, we'll believe you. But the backside of that is we need to be less trusting and more verifying.
Absolutely.
And so we started identifying in 2019 weaknesses in the program where we were seeing systemic failures in the verification side. And we have now issued a number, 5, 6, 7 reports where we keep identifying that you're not going out and checking to see that the people who you've got on the program are truly eligible and truly beneficiaries. You know, in the office, what we always say, we look for control weaknesses. I don't go out and look to see whether Joe Smith is supposed to be on Medicaid or not. That is the department's responsibility. It's the agency's responsibility to do those verifications. And what we find is historically, these verification programs are just not robust and aren't being done efficiently.
And that's one of the things that we were hoping would happen with the states with the Big Beautiful Bill, that they get, I'll use Kentucky as an example, my own state. Once you're on Medicaid, you're pretty much on Medicaid forever. And Medicaid was created to be a temporary safety net program. And what's happened, especially in the states that have expanded Medicaid, is it's become an entitlement. And there's no accountability with respect to all these new programs. Anytime there's autism, if there's more money for autism, it seems like the number of people that are declared autistic skyrockets. If anytime there's money put in for mental health, that you just have all these providers that show up and all these people that supposedly are receiving mental health services, and no one really knows that much about it. So I appreciate the work that you two have done. Again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. And before I yield, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the Oversight Committee staff report, and I encourage everyone to read it, The Cost of Doing Nothing, How Tim Walsh and Keith Ellison Fueled Minnesota's Fraud Explosion.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask to enter into the record unanimous consent. Thank you. I would ask to enter into the record April 21st, 2026, a report from Protect Our Care entitled The Real Fraud. Trump pardoned the nation's biggest healthcare fraudsters, which describes how President Trump pardoned over $2 billion in fraud.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, and we'll turn it back over to you. And I now recognize Ranking Member Simon for her 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've learned a lot from our witnesses today, so again, I want to thank you for traveling all this way. You know, Democrats do believe, as do our colleagues across the aisle, that it is critically important to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse so that the taxpayer dollars actually help real people and communities that they were intended to help. Those found guilty of fraud should be held accountable. That is without question. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle say that their pursuit of fraud is to strengthen the federal programs that struggling Americans turn to for help. But it is beyond clear that that is not the truth. Republicans' signature law, the One Big Beautiful Bill, cut more than $1 trillion from Medicaid, SNAP, which feeds hungry Americans, children's health insurance programs, and other programs that help folks meet their very basic needs, the most low income among us, while this affordability crisis is drowning our people across the country. In Ohio, more than 450,000 people are expected to lose their health insurance coverage by 2034, due to the One Big Beautiful Bill, so that Republicans can instead provide tax cuts for the wealthiest among us. This question is for Mr. Faber. Do you agree with my colleagues in the Republican Party and their decision to rip health insurance away from over 450,000 Ohioans?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, to the representative, I'm not sure that the auditor's position is relevant in that analysis, and I'm not sure that that analysis is one that I would agree with. What I would say with regard to the question that you're identifying is whether or not we are looking at fraud or waste and abuse, I think it's important to distinguish the two. As a prosecutor, somebody who has a criminal prosecution division, for us, fraud is a very legal determination.
Absolutely.
Waste and abuse is a broader question.
Thank you.
And to the extent that we can do things cooperatively to eliminate waste and abuse, I think we can save an awful lot of money in the system to provide more benefits for more Ohioans and more Americans.
Sir, thank you so much for your answer. And I think it is worth noting that yourself and other members of the majority, including the governor, have a responsibility to oversee this program, identify waste, fraud, and abuse, and provide opportunities not only just to identify, but to weed them out and create a stronger system where folks aren't able to defraud the system so easily. That seems like that's the problem that we should be talking about. How and why did this happen? Not just the folks who committed the fraud. Why was it so easy? I have another question for Representative Davila. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, you have it, just
Okay.
like vanilla.
Vanilla. People
And just as
pronounce my
boring,
name
I
all
can
the
assure you.
time, so I always ask. Do you agree with the decision to rip away health insurance from an additional 450,000 Ohioans?
Mr. Chairman, to the member, I don't think that's an accurate characterization. And again, you know,
Well, that's helpful. That's helpful to know. I'm going to move on, actually. I want to make clear why we're asking these questions is we're trying to, too, get to the bottom of the issue. The Republican candidate for the Ohio governorship has called Medicare and Medicaid mistakes and, quote, particularly Medicaid, the very program Republicans are supposed to be here talking about serving and saving today. Senator, I have a question for you, Senator Antonio. Are Medicare and Medicaid mistakes?
Absolutely not. Medicare and Medicaid protect thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in our country and provide them the health care so they can stay healthier. And actually, in the long run, it's cost effective.
And that's including disabled children who are bound to their beds and bound to their homes. That's including, Senator, elders who are on literally their last years. That includes folks in deep hospice care are supported by these programs. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely.
Across all faiths, races, across all parts of Ohio, folks who need these services are granted support from Medicaid and Medicare. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
There are about 120,000 Ohioans who depend on the Medicaid waiver each year. The home and community-based health services waivers allow seniors, our elders, with the opportunity to live with dignity. That's also including folks with disabilities. I'm so thankful for this opportunity to discuss these incredibly important programs and how Ohio can do a better job at securing these programs so that people who really need them can get them. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Simon. And we'd now like to move on for recognize Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rosiak, who's Ishmael Muhammad?
Ismail Muhammad is a state legislator.
State representative in Ohio,
Correct.
currently serving, right? And is he Somali American descent?
Yes,
He is. Okay, do you know what his, in addition to serving in the legislature, what's his profession? Do you know?
a lawyer.
He's a lawyer. You happen to know where his law office is?
Yeah, when I was going through these buildings that were entirely populated by home health care firms, I noticed one business. I turned to my colleague and I said, we finally found something that isn't a home health care business. It's a law office. And we didn't think anything of it. I later learned that was the Ismail Law Office, which is also the campaign headquarters
Somali American
for-
state representative. His law office is 1395, I think 1395 East Dublin Granville Road. And in that same facility, there are 35 of these, what would you call them, $2 million side hustle businesses, right? Where they're ripping off the tax. 35 in that. Do you happen to know if Mr. Mohammed was the lawyer who helped set up these LLCs who were ripping off the taxpayers of the country in the state of Ohio?
I don't know.
Don't know? Probably a fair question to explore. Maybe that's the next thing you can dig into. Find out if he was actually setting these organizations up, right? You know, right across the hall. We'll create this organization. Do you know if any of these organizations gave campaign contributions to Mr. Mohammed?
I didn't look specifically. I wrote about another candidate that owned a home health care business and ran for office, and his campaign was funded largely by fellow home health care owners.
Well, and that guy gave contributions to Mr. Mohammed too, right? The guy you looked into who got campaign contributions from these LLCs, 35 of them in the same building where the state rep has his law office. That guy you just talked gave contributions to to Ismail Muhammad, but we did look it up, and he received thousands of dollars from these companies in his building that he may or may not have set up, but you're going to check that out as a good journalist, right? You're going to find out if that's the case. Wow, that's amazing. Because we got the chart from the state senator that says Republicans, it's all Republicans, even though they've indicted, I think, 153 indictments, 110 convictions, but somehow it's the Republicans' fault. Oh, but I forgot to ask this question. Was Mr. Mohammed, Ismail Muhammad, in the General Assembly, whose law office is at the same facility where there are 35 of these HCBS, home community-based services providers, ripping off the taxpayers, is he a Republican or Democrat?
He's a Democrat, and like many of the home health care operators, he also had tax debts when I looked him up. And he also had created a company called the Chiropractic Center, some sort of medical office or another that was apparently running, I guess, out of his law office.
But it's funny because the good senator from Ohio who has the R's for, you know, the red R's there on her chart didn't seem to want to mention Mr. Mohammed, who's right in the middle of this. Literally, his office is right in the middle of it. But no, he didn't. No way Democrats are involved. Here's the pattern I see. And the chairman of the full committee kind of pointed this out. The similarities between Minnesota and, well, first let me ask you this question. Did anyone call you a racist for trying to just uncover what's happening to millions, frankly, as the auditor said, billions of dollars of taxpayer money? Did you get called that?
Yeah, so half of Ohio's budget roughly spent on Medicaid, and that's doubled in the last few years. I tried to ask one healthcare owner, and I have his exact quote in response. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? You don't pay my bills. I'm just going to tell everybody you're racist.
Yeah, that's what always happens. That's how the left operates. I always point out the left has a template. The left will tell a lie. We're actually providing services to elderly Ohioans going into the left will tell a lie. Big media will report, oh, this is wonderful. Big tech will amplify the lie. You tell the truth, they call you racist. It's happened in Minnesota. This is the pattern, and this is what the chairman was getting at. Minnesota, it was the same thing. Fraud on a huge scale. Somali American population involved in it. When they check it out, they call them racist. Only difference is, in Ohio, they're actually doing something about it. 153 indictments, 110 convictions. In Minnesota, it was all the U.S. attorneys. It wasn't the state. They didn't do squat. And the reason they didn't do squat, we have the quote. This is a person who worked in the Attorney General's office in Minnesota. There was a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. Politics stopped them in Minnesota. It's not stopping Mr. Faber, Mr. Davila from doing their work. The state senator wants to just criticize Republicans, even though the guy in the middle of all this is the Democrat state representative in the same darn building. Okay, did I get anything wrong in that assessment, Mr. Faber?
Congressman, Chairman, no.
All right, I appreciate it. With that, and I want to thank the chairman for his good work on this broad issue and what he's doing. Outstanding member of Congress, we appreciate that. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. And I now recognize Mr. Walkinshaw from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. the Task Force on Defending Constitutional Rights and Exposing Institutional Abuses. I am really excited to be here. Suspending funds that Congress appropriated in violation of the Impoundment Control Act and the Constitution. Firing independent inspectors general to cover up their waste, fraud, and abuse. An unconstitutional executive order on birthright citizenship, plainly violating the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Defying a court order to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States. Stripping a former CISA cybersecurity director of their security clearance in a clear act of political retaliation. Altering federal employees' email to include partisan language, an act ruled illegal and unconstitutional. Giving DOJ access to individuals' social security numbers and bank account numbers. Illegally sharing federal agency data on outside servers. Attempting to exempt DOJ from FOIA, illegally deploying the United States military inside the United States, using the Department of Justice to target perceived political enemies, taking place today as we speak, dismantling cyber and election security, violating the Emoluments Clause, and accepting billions of dollars in gifts from foreign leaders. These are just a few of the examples in which the Trump administration has violated the Constitution, abused institutions, disregarded the rule of law. I know that Chairman Gill has expressed his concerns about seeing Muslim families in malls in Dallas, but he and Mr. Jordan had no concerns with President Trump accepting a $400 million airplane from the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Muslim families in malls is a huge problem. $400 airplane from the Qatari sheikh, not a problem. Let's not forget the $1.8 billion slush fund they tried to ram through to pay off insurrectionists who attempted to overturn the results of a free and fair election, to pay off their buddies. When President Trump was asked about the Constitution and whether he had a responsibility to uphold it, he said, "I don't know." Blatantly unconstitutional. That's a direct quote. That's not from me. That's Judge John Kogenauer, a Republican-appointed federal judge. Targeted deportation proceedings continue unconstitutionally to chill freedom of speech. Again, not me. Judge William Young, a Republican-appointed judge. The lust for unbridled power and the imposition of cruelty in its quest know no bounds and are bereft of human decency. That's District Judge Fred Berry. This task force should be doing everything in its power to prevent institutional abuses and protect the integrity of the United States Constitution. And there's a long list of things we could work on that are taking place right now as we speak. So if we're serious about our work here, we should direct it to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because that's where the Constitution's being violated. That's where our institutions are being abused. Senator Antonio, Ohio saw a surge in ICE activity over the course of the last year as a result of the Trump administration's out-of-control mass deportation policies, often unconstitutional, by the way. Federal judges have said ICE violated the law, violated court orders more than 100 times. Can you just speak to the impact that these policies have had on your community?
There's a general state of fear in our local communities. Folks are afraid to attend everything from grocery stores to their children's schools, show up for court appearances where they're trying to follow the law, and everything in between, even show up for their faith communities. There is fear. There is a level of fear, and certainly they're unable to go to work.
Are the American citizens you represent confident that this administration will follow the Constitution, follow the law and not abuse the institutions it controls. Are your constituents, who are American citizens, confident of those facts?
My constituents are watching and paying attention to what's going on both in our communities and across the country. There is a level of fear. There is not the faith that the federal policies and the policies that are coming from the administration at the federal level are there to protect them. They fear they're there to persecute and prosecute them.
Thank you. I yield back.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Walkinshaw. And before I turn it over to Mr. Biggs, I'd like to enter into the record two different things. First, a transcript from the March 4th, 2026 hearing on fraud and misuse of federal funds in Minnesota. Part 2, where Ms. Ansari said that it was, quote, outrageous that this fraud is what we are choosing to spend our time on the Oversight Committee. Secondly, I'd like to enter into the record this article from Cleveland.com, Medicaid fraud scheme in Ohio pushed in testimony at Senate hearing, where Ms. Antonio said, quote, I question whether it is real or not to begin with, referring to fraud. And without objection, those will be entered into the record. Now I'd like to recognize Mr. Biggs from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Senator Davila, you were asked if about 450,000 people had been ripped off of Medicaid in Ohio, if you were okay with that, and you said you thought that was a mischaracterization, and you were prohibited from expanding on that. I'd like you to answer that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Mr. Biggs. What I was going to say was a reaction to the comments from the ranking member toward the beginning, where she indicated that Americans are struggling to pay bills and a number of other things. And I just wanted to indicate that those challenges are exacerbated by the fraud that we're seeing in this system. And just to underscore the point that the people who are on Medicaid, age, blind, disabled, others who are qualified for the system under the eligibility requirements prescribed by federal law and at the state level, those are the people that we're looking out for. Every dollar that's being defrayed and diverted to go somewhere else in the way of waste, fraud, or abuse is a dollar that can't be used for someone on the system who legitimately can benefit from it.
Mr. Faber, you mentioned in your written statement that there were 164 public officials, you actually mentioned in your opening statement too, who your office has convicted for fraud. What kind of public officials are these? Are these elected officials or are they bureaucrats?
Both. We have criminal jurisdiction when somebody involved in government is lying, stealing, and cheating with government money. And so if it's a public official, I've convicted county sheriffs, I've convicted county commissioners, I've convicted transit authority directors. In fact, I'm the first auditor in state history to do a 4-day jury trial myself against a regional transit authority official who was stealing both federal and state dollars.
All right. And you mentioned in your statement that in March of 2024, you found that there were 124,000 individuals who were enrolled in Ohio's Medicaid program and at least one other state. And that you said, quote, now quote, Ohio paid managed care organizations more than $1 billion associated with these enrollees, close quote. Yeah. Is that an accurate statement? Are we talking $1 billion for 124,000 people that are multiple enrolled?
Correct. What happens is somebody, for whatever reason, is enrolled in multiple states. This is not a new problem. It is something the federal government and CMS knows about. It is a problem that Ohio has known about. We've identified it on at least 2 or 3 different occasions. And at one point, our former Medicaid director, who candidly did a lot to take down controls in the system and create some of the problems, essentially downplayed it. And despite us saying, okay, are these Medicaid managed care organizations somehow going to be held accountable for this? Let's get the money back. The answer historically has been, we're aware of the problem, and nothing to see here.
Yeah, we'll get to it later. We have the same problem in Arizona, billions of dollars of Medicaid fraud. I'm going to go next to you, Mr. Rosiak. So when you say the largest billing code is personal services for DHS, that's $140 billion over how long a period of time for that?
This is dating back to 2019-ish.
Okay, so 5, 6 years, including COVID time?
Correct.
Okay. And please tell us about, one building had 94 companies billing Medicaid more than $66 million. Tell us about that one building and what you found.
Sure. I think that the best way to encapsulate it, the auditor actually found 15% of all spending, home health care spending in the state of Ohio, went to 2 zip codes. And so when you're talking about all these buildings in one place and all these recipients in 2 zip codes, what it makes you think is, how is it that the residents of Northeast Columbus are so sick more than anybody else? And Ohio is a big state, and they've got people from all kinds of walks of life. You would assume that they would be encountering debilitating illnesses in their old age at roughly similar rates. And so the issue is when you see buildings with these concentrations, and 15% in 2 zip codes is crazy. And it gets to the idea that there are certain sub-communities in Ohio that are feigning illness or claiming to be eligible for this program that was intended to be for old ladies that are on the verge of death, and they're actually middle-aged and they're perfectly healthy.
You mentioned one lady in Massachusetts who stole $100 million by charging for non-existent home health care. Have we seen that in Ohio as well?
There have been, I believe it happens very commonly in Ohio, and there was a GPS rule that was supposed to make sure people actually were going, and that rule was actually removed. And so there's no way to prove they didn't actually go and visit these patients.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have several UCs I'd like to bring forward.
Okay.
Biden commutes sentences of 2 Illinois mega fraudsters.
Without objection.
North Dakota judge blasts Biden for setting fraudsters free.
Without objection.
Ohio Auditor of State Keith Farber's report electronic visit verification, November 2024.
Without objection.
Same author, Auditor Faber, how do you say that, Faber? Faber, Auditor Faber, cost of concurrent enrollment.
Without objection.
Analysis, Ohio rocked by fraud, now what?
Without objection.
Arizona nurse practitioner sentenced for role in Medicaid fraud scheme.
Without objection.
Minnesota Medicaid operators bankruptcy to riches rise, crashes into fraud probe.
Without objection.
DOJ, Azerbaijan national charged in $90 million California healthcare fraud scheme.
Without objection.
5 arrested in alleged $267 million hospice fraud scheme that exploited California's Medi-Cal system.
Without objection.
Hospice fraud uses stolen identities for fake patients.
Without objection.
RFK Jr. announces largest autism fraud bust in American history with $46.6 million Medicaid scheme indictment.
Without objection.
California man pleads guilty to orchestrating $270 million medication reimbursement fraud scheme.
Without objection.
And White House cuts $1.3 billion in Medicaid payments to California.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. Yield back.
Mr. Chair, I have 2 UC requests, please.
Yep.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record April 4, 2025 article that KFF Health News titled Trump Health Fraud Focus at Odds with Past Pardons, which points to the hypocrisy in President Trump's pardoning convicted fraudsters. My second UC.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. My second UC, it's from December 19th, 2025, article from the Washington Post entitled Trump's Pardon Wipes Out Payments to Defrauded Victims, which shows how our president lets criminals and fraudsters walk free so long as they donated to his campaign.
Without objection. Great. And now I'd like to recognize Representative Presley from Massachusetts for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's hearing is the first one convened by the so-called task force on defending constitutional rights and exposing institutional abuses. And yet, we are ignoring the fact that Donald Trump is the single largest threat to our Constitution, and judges across our country have consistently ruled, in fact, that he has violated the law. And when it comes to institutional abuses, Trump created a $1.8 billion fund to directly send taxpayer dollars to his friends and political allies. That is what I call fraud. But Republicans won't ignore Trump's culpability, so let's discuss a federal government response to what is happening in Ohio. Mr. Faber, given your role as state auditor, when public funds are stolen, what do you consider to be meaningful accountability?
Chairman, Representative, essentially the question is what do you think needs to happen to people who are caught stealing, lying, cheating with government money, as we have done in 165 different cases? You hold them accountable. If it is convictable fraud, meaning a crime, you prosecute them and send them to prison. On the other hand, a lot of what we see, as I talked about earlier, as somebody who prosecutes fraudsters, is waste or abuse. And that is essentially a public policy question. You need to tighten the controls, tighten the eligibility, tighten the parameters of the program to limit waste and abuse. We lose more money in waste and abuse than we do in other areas. But fraud is certainly something, if you catch somebody who violates the law, you hold them accountable and you prosecute them. That's what I've done.
Okay, and I'll just say, yes, and in my opinion, accountability must also include restorative justice. So that means making communities whole. It means putting the stolen money back into programs that it was taken from, and sending a clear message that theft of public good, of public funds, simply does not pay. It is unacceptable. I don't feel that's the standard that's being modeled by Republicans. In today's hearing, we've seen and heard people castigate and attack caregivers who bathe our elders, who cook for disabled neighbors, and keep families together in their homes. And so when it comes to holding bad actors accountable and helping victims, Trump and Republican sycophants seem to me to be deeply unserious. And that is a choice. It's a deliberate choice. Mr. Faber, do you believe that individuals, and this is a yes or no question, please, that individuals convicted of healthcare fraud should have to pay restitution, yes or no?
Absolutely. We have issued hundreds of millions of dollars of findings for recovery for restitutions, not just on convictions, but when we find somebody has violated the rules.
All right, and I'll just ask for the entire dais. Mr. Rosiak? Do you believe individuals convicted of healthcare fraud should have to pay restitution, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, and Representative Villa?
Yes.
And Senator Antonio?
Yes.
All right. So you agree, but you know who doesn't? Donald J. Trump. In fact, I want to ask a unanimous consent to enter into the record a June 2025 article from Truth Out titled "Trump Grants Clemency to Executive Who Orchestrated $250 million in Medicaid Fraud Scheme."
Without objection.
Now, look, I support using the clemency power to rectify injustices when the criminal legal system gets it wrong. But Donald Trump, with the support of Republicans in Congress, is using his authority to reward fraudsters, and he is doing so at the expense of victims of fraud. I published a report called Trump's Clemency Gap. It reveals how Trump has prioritized pardoning people who collectively defrauded the federal government of over $2 billion in taxpayer money. For example, in 2011, Florida resident Lawrence Duran, owner of American Therapeutic Corporation, was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison for orchestrating a $205 million Medicare fraud scheme involving false and fraudulent claims for mental health services. A federal judge ordered Duran to pay more than $87 million in restitution, which Trump wiped away. This task force should have a hearing about that. Senator Antonio, do you support Trump denying $87 million in restitution to victims when he commuted Lawrence Duran, yes or no?
No.
Representative Villa?
It's not an issue I've looked at, and it's not
Well,
relevant to this hearing.
I'm asking you now, so
It's
I
not
just like
germane
your
to this
opinion.
hearing, Congresswoman.
It's pretty clean. Do you support Trump denying $87 million in restitution to victims when he commuted Lawrence Duran? Yes or no?
Stand by the statement I've given you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rosiak.
Same answer as Mr. Davila.
Well, I don't know. I guess I just have to take that as a no. Mr. Faber?
I'm not familiar with the facts. The short
It
answer
was
is the
publicly
president has the
reported, and
clemency.
I'm making you aware of it right now, so you could just
You're
just
not
tell
without me understanding both sides. Without the president's facts in the commutation, he has
There's
that
really
power
no
when
both
he can use
sides there.
somebody.
Somebody-
It's his decision.
Okay.
Now, the fact is there are things that I've disagreed with the Biden pardons as well, but the short
Fair
answer.
enough, but that also is not the subject of this hearing, so that's not germane. But this is, and we should be having a hearing about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Presley. And now I'd like to recognize the great Brian Jack for 5 minutes.
Well, first, Mr. Chairman, I open my time by congratulating you. For those watching at home, this hearing is a direct byproduct of the meritocracy of the House Republican Conference. Chairman Gill and I are members of the 119th Congress's freshman class, and though just a freshman, Chairman Gill distinguished himself over the past 17 months as one of the best investigators and worst enemies of waste, fraud, and abuse. Chairman Comer and many others across our conference recognized that leadership and specifically created a task force to expose the institutional abuses and fraud across our government, and he appointed a freshman, Chairman Gill, as its chairman of this task force. So I congratulate you, Mr. Chairman, on this first hearing and also the meritocracy of the Republican majority in Congress. I'd like to start, if I could, with Mr. Faber. We represent similar states. Georgia is my home state. I represent the 3rd District of Georgia, and our states have similar economies, similar populations. I would say similar football, but we've seen in recent years that's not necessarily the case. But I would ask you, if you could, to help personify to my constituents who may be watching at home just what the impact is. If you could try to estimate for the average Ohioan the waste, fraud, and abuse that you have to battle with every day, what is the cost to the average Ohioan for that?
It is real money. As I always say, Bob and Betty Buckeye don't care whether the money comes out of their front pocket, their back pocket, their left pocket, or their right pocket. If somebody is stealing their money, whether it's state money, local money, or federal money, it's their money. And so as they're trying to pay for gas, as they're trying to pay for health care, as they're trying to pay for food on their table, they take anybody who is ill-gotten in their gains seriously. In this regard, one of the things I've identified isn't just Medicaid fraud, it's unemployment fraud during the pandemic. I can put that in real money. In Ohio, we could say roughly $6 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse occurred in the pandemic unemployment system. That is the equivalent of $2,000 for each and every Ohio employee, everybody who works in Ohio. If I took Medicaid into the system, and if we assume Medicaid is a similar number, roughly between $4 and $6 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse, you can equivalent that to about $2,000 for every Ohio employee. That's real money. It's money that people are paying in state taxes. It's money that they're paying in local taxes. It's money that certainly they're paying in federal taxes. And in that regard, this means a lot to your constituents, just like it means a lot to Bob and Betty Buckeye. They expect government to work. And when you have weaknesses in controls and programs that are designed to put more people on the rolls without ever asking the question, do you really need these services, that ultimately you're going to have less faith in the system. And that's what we see through the things that we've been identifying.
Thank you, Auditor. Mr. Rosiak, I want to congratulate you on your reporting. You've done a great service to your country, and people are going to be reading your reporting for many years to come. But I'm curious, as we wrap up this task force today, this hearing, what are some of the themes you've seen across the country? I mean, are there specific pockets of the country where you see this institutional abuse, or what themes have you seen in your reporting and your investigative work?
One of the things that I think is important for Congress to grapple with is that this is almost entirely among foreign-born people. At least the part that I saw in Columbus, it was primarily Bhutanese people and Somalian, to some extent from Ghana and Sierra Leone. But some of this is being used systematically by refugees to bring money back to their home countries. And so Congress created this program as medical aids, and there are people that are turning it into foreign aid. And if Congress wants to send money to Bhutan, it needs to do that above board. There is one family with the name Adki Hari, that's a Bhutanese name, that's been paid $350 million over the last several years just from Medicaid in Ohio alone. So that's just one state, just one Bhutanese name. That's $350 million in Medicaid. That's 1/10 of the GDP of Bhutan. And what I found is that all of the Bhutanese advocacy organizations and charities are tied to, sometimes share an address with, home health care companies. And they're taking that money from Medicaid and then sending it even to fund public school systems in foreign countries.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that family, and with the 30 seconds left, I want you to share to this committee, this task force, and the people watching at home, some of the lavish lifestyle that was promoted by that family. They posted a lot on social media. Could you share with us some of the things you found in your reporting?
Drinking champagne on private jets, private yachts, wearing Prada clothes, giving birthday gifts of Range Rovers and Escalades.
So to everyone watching at home, those are your tax dollars that went to this family that fraudulently defrauded you, the American people, and your home and your families of the resources that you deserve. So, Mr. Chairman, I congratulate you again on the first hearing of this task force, and I congratulate our witnesses. Thank you for helping us do a better job serving the American people. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. Mr. Rosiak and all the witnesses, thank you all again for coming here. Mr. Rosiak, you've identified multiple individuals and LLCs that you believe engaged in fraud. How many of these had Somali or Bhutanese or other African origin names?
100%.
100%. And how many did you look through? I mean, that's 100% of how many, roughly?
I looked at the names of hundreds of companies. I looked more deeply into maybe 50.
More deeply into 50. You looked into hundreds of companies, and 100%, you're telling me, had names that were Somali, Bhutanese, or other sort of African origin derivation.
Correct. I thought I saw an American, and I was very excited, but it turned out to be the teenage son of that money launderer who was actually just a proxy for this woman from Ghana.
What are some of these names that you come across? Do you hear the same names, or are they different names?
Yeah, it's funny because this started off, I was investigating a guy named Robert Achiapong, and then I found a different scammer named Roberta Achiapong, and I thought they were related, but they weren't. It's just, that's how common it is to scam Medicaid when your name is Achiapong. And then I did the same thing with a guy named Aliu Conte, who has 30 criminal charges in Cuyahoga County, or in Franklin County, and threatened my family, malicious wounding, crazy stuff. This guy's a career criminal. And then there was a different guy named Alfred Conte, who was convicted of Medicaid fraud, but Ohio, Franklin County expunged his record. They let him plead down, and then they expunged his record. He didn't have to pay any money back except like $500. And the Ohio Nursing Board let him keep his license. So you've got the Contes, the Achiapongs, and it just seems to be the family business is billing Medicaid.
Criminal rings. We did a lot of work previously this year on Medicaid fraud in Minnesota. There seem to be a lot of similarities here. Can you tell us in your investigation, have you found any connections between Ohio Medicaid fraud and the Somali fraud that we saw in Minnesota?
Yeah, it's the same people. They all have relatives in both places, and they move back and forth. First of all, I think there was $130 million in cash that transferred from the Columbus airport to the Minnesota airport and then to Somalia. And so they're moving basically briefcases of cash. And there's one guy that had, basically he racked up $30,000 in tax debts in Columbus running this daycare center and not paying his taxes. So then he started a home health care company in Minnesota, billed $35,000 in 1 month, and then dissolved the company.
So I just want to be clear, your testimony is that there is a large interstate criminal enterprise of Somali fraudsters that are defrauding the federal government in multiple states of potentially billions of dollars. Is that your testimony?
Correct.
And can you give us a sense of the scale of this fraud? We saw it in Minnesota, we're seeing it here, but have you seen it in other places, or can you give us a sense for either dollar values or the number of people involved, in your opinion?
There's thousands of people involved. I would say the majority of Bhutanese people are either on Medicaid home health care or are providing Medicaid home health care services. They had recently 15,000 people. This nonprofit group, this advocacy group, which is tied to actually founded by a home health care guy. They had 15,000 Bhutanese people come to this party in Ohio, and they'd bust in all the participants on their Medicaid vans because everybody there has their own Medicaid company. And so I think Bhutanese people are systematically using Medicaid, not only in Ohio, but also in Pennsylvania and Kentucky and New York and in other states where they perceive that they will pay the family member and they will pay for non-nursing services. And those are the two big vulnerabilities.
So it's not just the Somalis, it's also Bhutanese. It's across multiple states. They're coordinating with each other. There's a network of foreigners running criminal fraud rings within our government, within our country, I should say, defrauding our federal government. Thank you so much for the work that you have done on this. It's been fantastic reporting, so we really appreciate this. Senator Antonio, thank you for being here. Has Somali immigration been good for Ohio?
You know, that's really outside of my purview of
You're a state senator. Would you like to see
information.
more
Well,
immigration from
as far
Somalia?
as I'm processing your question, and I have to say that I was almost brought to tears just now.
72%
Because
of
the
Somali
rate,
immigrants are on
the
on
rate
welfare.
and the level of hateful rhetoric based on
defrauding your
false
state at an
information
astounding rate,
is
and I think that
shocking.
most Ohioans
Is
would have a
shocking
problem
to me.
with that.
The lack of even humanity to
I think
group
it's
a group
inhumane
of
to allow
people
your own
together.
state to be defrauded
I am
at
shocked.
astounding
I
rates.
am shocked
Billions
and
of
appalled
dollars
by the
taken out of the
behavior
pockets
here
of
right
working
now.
class people
I am
going to
shocked.
criminal fraudsters.
Because
I certainly
in
have
every,
a major problem
in every
with that.
community,
I think
there are
that's an
good
issue, and I think
people
most
and there are
Americans
bad
agree.
people.
Chair, regular
Agree there are
order.
But
good-
to
good
try
people
to
Understand we're not
say
supposed
bad
to
people.
disrespect. We're not supposed to
And
that
disrespect
with
our
that
every
said,
witnesses.
we are out of
member of a
time, Ms.
group
Antonio.
We're not
is
supposed to
somehow
disrespect
a
our
We've already gone
criminal
over here.
is shocking to me. I am shocked and
We're
appalled.
already out of time here. That said, thank you to the witnesses for taking the time to come here. It's always fun on the Oversight Committee, always exciting. In closing, I want to formally thank you guys for your testimony today. With that and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there's no further business without objection, the task force stands adjourned.